Hey everyone, I'm Scott Davenport. Welcome to In Post. So, this is a long overdue video. Several months ago, Peter asked me about Moody desaturated looks in Lightroom or ON1. He'd been using Nik for a while. Now, the Nik suite recently got new life breathed into it by DxO, so maybe Nik will still be around and you can continue getting those looks that you like from color effects or whatever module you're using. But I did really want to get around to this question about what can we do in creating moody or desaturated looks with Lightroom or with ON1 photo. So that's what we're going to do today, and we're going to just dive straight in here. So I've got this photo here of abandoned beach, and well, why did I choose this photo? As I record this, I'm getting ready to head over to Oregon for workshops, and I think when this goes live, I'll be on a plane or just about to get on a plane to go up to Oregon. So I've done all my basic stuff here, just the standard types of things I do on all the different photos. Let's go into HSL, and we can see I've done some boosts of color, because now normally when I'm trying to get a desaturated look, I usually start by saying, well, I want to make the photo the best looking photo that it can be, and then start to pull back on saturation. So in this case, I've increased saturation in oranges, that's kind of for the sand, a little bit in blue for the sky. Now in Lightroom, one of the options that we have is using brushes or gradients to desaturate areas. And so if you wanted to do this globally, we could get a gradient, and let's go ahead and just pre-stage it. I'll take the saturation down quite far, and right down at the very bottom, I'll just drag it down, and you can see this is now a little more desaturated. I'm going to leave a little bit of this on the bottom just so you can see the difference as I pull that saturation down. You can see that we can actually make out the edge of that line right there on the gradient. But you can see it's making the scene desaturated. Now the thing is, it's not making it incredibly moody. This is a pretty limited control. We don't have control over the individual color channels. So we could, instead of doing that, try doing things here in the HSL pane. And so I could take the oranges down, I can take the blues down, or I could keep the oranges up. You start playing with these sliders here to desaturate certain colors. There's some greens out in the rocks there, even some yellows. And start working sliders that way. Really though, when I do these types of looks, which it is occasional, I'll usually do it in inclement weather, is I prefer to do this in ON1 because I like to use a black and white filter and then back off the strength of it. So I can't really do that very well in Lightroom, short of doing some more elaborate masking. And I have not yet updated my Lightroom to include the new masking tools for luminance ranges and color ranges. So that might be something else that can help. But what I will do here is I'll show you some of the steps I'll do in ON1 photo to accomplish that type of moody look. So let me get this photo over into ON1 and show you some of the filters we can add there. All right, got our photo into ON1, and so a few of the things that I'll do with most of my photos is add a little more dimension to it, and for this case, I want to add a little more color, a little more dynamic contrast. Again, that approach that I'm taking with getting a moody photo is I want to make it the best looking photo that it can be. So, dynamic contrast, very basic stuff, just minor increases on the sliders, really popping the rocks and making those things stand out. If I have a moody photo, I want to have a strong subject. Color, this is an increase to the sky. You can see that before and after. And I may revisit that depending on how much we desaturate. Another color, so I'm doing the same type of thing I was doing in Lightroom, right? I'm getting these oranges boosted up, I'm getting these blues boosted up, because I know I'm going to start turning around and doing the opposite thing. And if I don't know, when I want to desaturate something, I still want to have that hint of that color, right? So so for me, this type of approach works because of what I do next, which is with the black and white filter. So this is kind of elaborate. Let me turn on the filter. Now I'll copy that mask for now, and I'm going to reset everything here so we can see how did I approach this. So if we have black and white and we put that all the way to strength, we just made a black and white version of the photo. Okay, fine. Manipulating these different sliders here to get something that looks good in black and white. Now I'm pushing this a little farther than I might normally, and so you're going to notice a little bit of some haloing around some of the rocks where I've really pushed the deltas between, say, the darker areas and the deeper, greens and yellows here versus the blues. So there's some kind of carving on the edge there. I'm aware of that, but I want to make sure you can see this through the video. But what to do next is, very first thing is just work the opacity slider and take this down some, just partially. So we get some of the colors removed, but some isn't. So even just now, before and after, I'm already getting it desaturated. Maybe that's too much desaturation. Maybe it's not enough. If I want to have a little more color, I make that opacity of black and white a little bit lower. I can also start to play with masking, and that's what I did before here. I added a luminosity mask, and by default, I click that. You can see this mask that it created. It's masking away from the rocks and applying the black and white to the sky. We can play around with how much that is. So you can take the density slider and start removing some of that mask there and seeing how it interacts with things. I can invert this guy and see if that helps, although that's just really going to affect the rocks. Undo that invert. We can play with levels and window. I've got a different video about how to adjust those. I go into extreme detail on that in a video course that I have an update for coming very soon. But this is kind of the magic one, the black and white, where you apply black and white at a partial strength. You get some desaturation going. I might even switch this over to a luminosity. Well, luminosity is probably a bad idea because that's just going to affect the tones and not color. I definitely want one of the blend modes. Darker color. I do like normal. I think that one's worked for this pretty well. What else can we do? I added a tone enhancer here. And this is so I have curves controls, right? So I just darken things. I want it to be moodier. Well, to me, moody means, not a good mood. It means kind of a bad mood. So, dark, sullen, a little bit grayer. And so, we can even play with the endpoints and kind of get a more matte finish. You can notice those rocks are getting kind of flat. I don't particularly like that for this photo. You can do the same thing with the highlights and just flatten those out a little bit so that you can see it up in these upper clouds here. Those are getting a little bit dingier. If I bring that back to normal versus kind of lowering it, making it a slight grayish tone. Vignettes are always good, right? We can deepen the vignette, darken things in. And this last one, this I just started to play. So what about bleach bypass? This is a filter I don't use very often. And you can see again, I applied a luminosity mask to this so I wasn't affecting the rocks as much. Even added a bit of a pull down on saturation and a tiny bit of this color hue, right? So the amount, if I take that hue to 0 versus bringing it up, I'm adding this, muddy, ruddy tone to it, just giving it a different feel. And that's, at this point, I kind of stopped and just said, I can experiment from here and try different things. But I think the tip on this one is using the black and white filter at a partial opacity, and in conjunction with something you've done for processing for color, making it a good color photo, and then using that black and white filter to tone those colors down. And you have the ability to do masking or control the individual color channels. And that's more control than we have in Lightroom. So Peter, I hope this does answer your question. And I apologize for it taking me so long to get to this video. I think overall, I still prefer doing these types of looks in ON1 instead of Lightroom. It's a little more flexible, more controls there, especially you can add a true black and white filter and layer it on top of something you've already done with color adjustments, and you're not remanded to just the saturation sliders in HSL. You've got the ability to stack things up and really mix and match things to your heart's content. Well, until next time, my name's Scott Davenport, and happy shooting. So many moons ago, I was asked by Peter about what